Hello, I'm Errol Lawson, and welcome to the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast, where I chat to influential Christian leaders twice a week, with the simple goal of helping established and up-and-coming leaders to fulfill their leadership potential. Each episode is packed with leadership insights and tactics from our established interview guests that you can apply right now in your life today. For more information or to subscribe to the podcast, go to www.errollawson.com/podcast, where you can catch up on previous shows, read the show notes from our guests, find out their contact details, their book recommendations, and much, much more. Thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the episode. Thank you for joining us again on the podcast today. It's me, Errol Lawson, and really excited to have with me today Andre Anderson. Andre is an author, an artist, a teacher, a speaker, chief curator of the Authors of London project. He started writing books when he was 18 years old. He's now 6 books in, and 5 years later, he's had the opportunity to be able to work with the likes of Adidas and Nintendo, Red Bull, Yale, and The Guardian. He's received acclaim from media giants such as the ID magazine, Dazed Confused, SBTV, MTV Voices, and much more. His books and his writings generally revolve around the power of creativity and the role of an artist in his or her city. In March this year, he launched the Authors of London project, in which he basically gave out 1,000 copies of his book to all the residents on his local estate. The book was called Authors of the Estate, which is his estate is St. Raphael's Estate, which is in London, in the UK. His plan is to create more art that is purposeful and empowers the lives of those far and near. Andre, thank you for joining us today, my friend.
Excellent, man. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Well, illustrious biography. Again, we got the pleasure of bringing someone who's done a whole lot of stuff. I had a chance to chat with you before we began the call today. Well, Andre, if you will, fill in any gaps for us there, please, if you will, and give us a little glimpse into what's going on in your world right now.
So in terms of what I'm currently doing, other than the publications that I'm releasing, I'm addicted to creating publications. I get a weird high from it. So I'm looking to publish a new publication, which is Freedom and Balance magazine. But in between that, I'm just doing my thing. I'm a freelance graphic designer. I also do some writing, a little bit of journalism. So yeah, just been kind of in the mix of all of that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Now, I know you've not always been involved in leadership, and I know you're involved in ministry as well. You're also, you mentioned earlier, a Sunday school teacher at your church, and you work with the young people there, youth leader. You've not always been doing what you're doing right now. You've not always been this kind of creative entrepreneur working with these big brands at just the age of 23?
23, yeah.
That's pretty awesome, man. How did you transition into what you're doing right now? What was a turning point for you? How did you get into what you're doing now from what you're doing before? Tell us that story.
Well, I'll tell you what, there's one scripture that I didn't necessarily understand until recently, when it talks about a gift will make room for you and present you before great men. And I don't know if you ever played GTA, so like the video game GTA 3.
A little bit too old, maybe.
Yeah, in the game itself, GTA 3, the earlier ones anyway, not the newer ones. When you first play the game, you can roam for a certain amount, but then there's certain parts of the map that are locked to you. You can't get past it. But it's only when you develop in your character and develop in your story when the map starts to unlock a little bit. And what I kind of understood the proverb to mean now, when it says a gift makes room for you, the gift kind of like extends your borders. So it's almost like a thing where when God makes you, he almost puts you in a small little box, but then he gives you this thing that allows your box to be a little bit bigger, which he calls the gift. And the more you work on the gift, the more the borders kind of like expand. But I suppose that when it comes down to me, I wouldn't necessarily say that there was a definitive moment. There's been probably different moments. But because I've always been writing comic books, I've always been drawing, I've always been writing poetry and doing all sorts of creative stuff. The older you get, the more sophisticated it becomes. So because you keep working on the gift, I've met different people throughout my journey.
So how did it start then? Okay, so you were working your gift, you were kind of pursuing your passion, and like, what did you do? Like, did you just keep doing that, and then did doors open, or what happened? How did you get? Because you've achieved a lot. You've written like 6 books, was it? 5, 6 books?
6 books, yeah.
So how did you get from being someone who's just passionate and creative to being like an author and speaker and this creative guy?
Well, I started doing poetry when I was around 6.
Okay.
Obviously, when you're in school, you start doing different stories and stuff like that. I wanted to get into, when I started hitting 16, 17, I wanted to start applying all the poetry and all the words that I have, and I wanted to kind of collate it into a book. During those times, I was doing graphic design. So I knew how to create publications. All I needed to do was kind of create the words to put things together. Now, my first book was called Ultra. And it's something that I wanted to do for myself because I found that with my BlackBerry, I was spending so much time just chatting breeze on BBM. And I knew that with the amount of words I was putting into conversations, I could have actually used those words to make something constructive. So what I started to do is I said that for the next 12 days, I'm going to sit down and just write about a superhero living in Northwest London. It was just a random story that came off the top of my head. I just spent the next 12 days, just every day, it's going to be a 12 chapter book. Every day I write a chapter. And then when I was on the trains on my way to college and stuff like that, I was writing that. And then when that was finished, it was done in 12 days and I designed it. By the end of the month, it was finished. That was a definitive moment for me because it was an actual it was a work of art that wasn't just something that was in my head. It was something I could share with others. And I think that first book was the thing that kind of began to open doors because when it goes into someone's hands, they pass it on to someone else. For example, there was one guy that I met, his name is Nate, he was around about the same age as me, and he was working for this lady named Ruby Pseudo. I gave him one of my books, and then he must have gave it to her. She, at that time, was working with Adidas. She then gave the book to Adidas, and then Adidas paid for me to go to Montreal for 5 weeks. Things just connect to another. So I wouldn't necessarily say that there was a definitive moment where everything started happening, because the more I work on the gift, the more projects I create, the more of these things happen. So yeah, I kind of understand that I wouldn't have been able to write a book at the age of 16, but during the ages of 17 and 18, I was able to kind of have more materialized ideas for me to put something into a book.
Awesome. That's an amazing story. Like just the way it started from just you being like a 6-year-old, passionate, creative, writing stuff down, just doing what you were good at, just enjoying yourself really by the sounds of it. And that then developing, pursuing that passion and then acting on it to go and put it into a book and doors opening. That's a great lesson for us all. You know, we just got to do something, man. Whatever it is we're passionate about, don't procrastinate. Don't sit on that idea. Don't wait for someone's approval. Just start doing something, man. Awesome. Was there like you were starting, you're writing your books and what have you, first book, and you've gone to Montreal and you've had this amazing experience and written several books since then, but was there like a turning point somewhere, or maybe like a revelation, a aha moment that you had that was significant for you in your journey that maybe changed things?
I would say it was when I wrote my first book and I had it physically in my hands. Because it's different if you write and it's on the screen, it's whatever. It's no different from an essay. But once you actually go through the process of designing it and it's physically in your hands.
I remember that day I got my first book, bro. That was like, wow. Opening that box of books, first crisp box of books, and it's like, wow, this is mine, man. I did this.
Yeah. That's it. And I know that lasts forever. It's a thing where it's like, I knew that there was nothing I cannot do now. There's nothing I cannot do. So it's just kind of like, from there, it made me realize that the more I work on these kind of things, the more doors open.
Fantastic. Yeah. Fantastic. What's been your biggest challenge along the way?
I don't know. I would say it would have to be because I would say that I'm consistent to a degree, but being more consistent. So I feel that sometimes what I do is that I just say, for example, I need to get to the top of a hill and I have this boulder and I roll it like halfway there. And it was a lot of energy it took to get halfway there. And I feel almost accomplished. So I will like let the boulder go and I let it slide and go way down to the bottom. Then I start a new project and that's me going up the hill one more time. And I feel that I haven't necessarily, I've in the past been too precious with the things that I've been working on, saying this needs to be the one. This, at the end of the day, I need to get back to the idea of being a kid. When a kid just draws, they draw all day and they just continue drawing. And I feel that the level of consistency has been one of the things that has been a setback. Not pushing as much as I could have.
I hear that, bro. I can relate to that. I'm just thinking right now as you're speaking, there's one project that I've been working on for a while. I've let it on the back burner. It's there. I've built it to a place, and it's like, if I don't stop that ball rolling pretty soon, it's gonna roll all the way down. And all my work's gonna be undone. I've got to get back in, pick up that boulder, and get it moving again.
That's it.
Awesome, man. So, how do you define success?
I define success by love and creativity.
Okay.
So I suppose that like there is no greater law for human beings than to love your neighbor, love yourself, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. And even though it seems like a simple thing, like, oh yeah, that's all you need to do is love. It's like, no, that's enough. That's enough things. That's enough things to achieve in life. Because to have a mind that thinks more about others than you think about yourself is not an easy mindset to grasp. So I consider myself successful to a degree. Like I have love and creativity to a degree. But I suppose being successful, where you're continuously loving, you're continuously creating, it's not really a destination. It's more of a lifestyle or a choice you have to continuously make. And on the creativity side of it, it's just being able to create whatever comes to your head. Like, so the same... not the same, but like the attribute that God had, where he said, you know what, I want to make light today. And he made light, and there it was. And he said, you know what, I want to make the sea, and I want to make the stars. And whatever came into his mind to create, he was able to create. I want to be able to get to that point where whatever comes to my mind, I'll have the skills and the resources to just materialize it.
Amen. Awesome. And what have been the key habits for you that have contributed towards your success?
I would say it has been a constant obsession with what I'm doing, because I really do just love making art that really affects people's lives. So when I done the whole thing of me getting people from my estate and creating a book and then putting it through every single book in every single door in the estate, that's 1,000 homes. It wasn't done for a campaign. It was done for the love of it. It was done for the fun of it. So yeah, I suppose that when it comes down to success, when it comes down to creativity, there's nothing better than to just consistently do the things that you love. That's what's helped me.
Consistency, focus. That's what I'm hearing here, guys. Like, there's no two ways about it. It's okay to start something, but finishing something and seeing it through is a whole nother thing. And I'm hearing you, bro. I'm relating with you here. Consistency, focus, it makes all the difference, man. What would you say is your biggest weakness, Andre?
Again, it goes back to consistency, man. It goes back to consistency. Even though I feel like what has helped me so far is consistency, the biggest weakness is not being consistent enough. Being able to get the boulder and throw it on the other side. And I suppose that's why I want to do this publication. Because say, for example, for the past 4 years, I've written these 6 books, and they've really allowed my whole world to expand. It's allowed me to meet. If, for example, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation if I didn't at some point write something. So the words that I write has allowed the world to expand to me. But at the same time, I would release something, I'll release a book or whatever, and I won't talk for months. So I'll release something, I won't talk for months, and then I'll release something else. So it's always like starting again. And I feel that with what I want to do next up with the publication is kind of almost like creating a book every 2 months. So it's kind of like always having a message, always putting it out there, and always being consistent. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to creativity is a sport. It's the same as an athlete. So for example, me and you can run, we have the ability to run, but we're not a Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt is the person who dedicates himself to running. So he's able to stretch himself further than anybody else. So if I consider myself to be a creative, even though everybody can create, if I consider myself to be a creative, I have to be the one who creates all the time. So it's just kind of like that consistency is definitely a strong point, but also the weakness at the same time.
How do you address that? Like, is it something that you work on or not? Or how do you overcome that?
It's the obsession. I suppose that I'm harder working now than I was a couple months ago, but it's because I'm consistently thinking about it. Okay. And you hit whatever you focus on. So because I fill my mind with, you need to be more creative, you need to work on more stuff, you need to do X, Y, Z, and because that's just my obsession in my head, then my actions are now being turned towards that. Anyone who's really good at what they do, they're obsessed with the thing they're good at. So it's not obsessed in an unhealthy way, but it's something that my mind is really focused on. I consider success to be creativity. I consider it to be always making stuff all the time. So I'm like, if I consider that to be success, then why am I not doing that now? especially when you spend so much time in front of a screen, or like I'm on Instagram or I'm watching TV, and it's like, fam, you could have made a book by now. You could have done something within the time that you have. So yeah, it's just always trying to make use of my time, and the more I think about it, the more I end up doing it.
Single focus, end goal, and that passion to get there. What's your biggest strength?
I think it's the ability to see anything out of anything. So creativity in general is just about sight. It's not necessarily about you bringing something out of thin air. It's you seeing something that was already there.
Right.
So for example, God created the chair, yeah? But what he done is that he hid the chair in trees. And for hundreds of years, men were walking past trees and saw nothing. But then one day, someone was staring at a tree and then for some reason saw a chair. And that person then brings the chair out of the tree and then becomes creative. So I think one of the things that has helped me is being able to keep my eyes and ears open and being able to get like messages and being able to get ideas from almost anything. Being able to listen to a conversation and get inspired, or being able to read a book or watch something on TV, or sometimes just in the shower and getting something from my surroundings. It kind of allows you, not that you never experience a writer's block or whatever, but being able to see the universe in a grain of sand allows you to be in a situation where you never really run out of ideas.
Awesome. I love that. Being able to see the universe in a grain of sand. You know, always learning, guys, always having that open mind and just always being that student of life. I always say, like, just knowing that opportunities are everywhere, ideas are everywhere. There's always something new to learn if our minds are open to the possibility. And you said as well, like, you know, being in the shower, like I get loads of ideas in the shower, or it's, you know, there's being in that place, wherever it is for you who's listening, wherever that quiet place, that reflective place is for you, it's making that time to be in that place, and you can receive those ideas, receive those bits of inspiration that will help you to grow, do what you're doing, and move yourself forward.
And also as well, just to say that there's something that I found was very interesting. In terms of the Bible, it never necessarily talks about creativity, because the Bible doesn't necessarily promote the idea of human beings being creative. Whenever it uses the word creativity, it associates it with God, because only God can make something out of nothing. But we can see things that God has created. So even though Steve Jobs would have liked to think that he made the iPhone, God made the iPhone, but it was Steve Jobs that was able to see something that no one else did. So when it comes down to Solomon, we know him to be one of the most creative people in the Bible and one of the most wisest people who ever lived. When God says to him, "What do you want? I could give you anything, and what would you like?" And then Solomon says, "I want wisdom." In the King James Version, it says, "I want an understanding heart." In the Hebrew, he actually says, "I want a listening heart. I want the ability to listen."
Right.
And because of that, he was able to look at someone like an ant. He was able to look at an ant. He was able to get leadership qualities and leadership lessons from an ant. So he was able to hear everything. And even the Hebrew law, the most important law in the Torah is Shema, which means to hear. So our whole key to creativity is being able to hear and see the things that already exist.
Awesome. Thank you. And, you know, they say that success can be found or is hidden in your daily routine. What does the first 90 minutes of your day typically look like?
I'm not even gonna lie, it's not even that glamorous. I was thinking of that. I was like, it's not even that glamorous at all. Yeah. It's breakfast, well, number one, prayer, and taking some time out to, I don't do it as often as I feel I should, but taking some time out to listen. So knowing that your daily bread, knowing that some of the best ideas and all that kind of stuff is going to come from the word of God, then you kind of, obviously you read your Bible, but make sure that you take at least 10 minutes out to not say a word. And when you're praying, sit still and make sure that you get something. Even if you may not feel like you've got anything within those 10 minutes, that your ears and eyes are open throughout the day, because there may be a particular blessing for only today. That's what I believe the whole daily bread concept is about. There's certain things that are just in store for you today, these 24 hours. Tomorrow it's not going to exist. So it's kind of like keeping your eyes and ears open for that. So I make sure I pray. And then other than that, it's just kind of like just thinking about what I got with the day ahead. I try not to answer any emails or do anything like that too early in the morning, because once you get caught up in answering emails and all that kind of stuff, you just become reactionary. And then you just, I don't even know if reactionary is even a word, but you end up just reacting to everything.
Absolutely.
And then, so what I try to do is I try to spend my first 3 hours writing something or working on something creative that's going to require most of my brain power, and dedicate my first 3 hours to that. And then afterwards I'll start answering emails. So yeah, I know you asked for 90 minutes. I gave you my first 3 hours.
That's fantastic.
My first 90 minutes ain't even that interesting, but
no, thank you, sir. Thank you. And what was holding you back from leadership or from going into what you're doing right now? Was there ever anything holding you back? What was it?
No, I don't. If I'm honest with you, I don't think there's anything ever holding me back. There wouldn't be anything holding me back, but there will be a thing that stops the potency of what I do. So definitely that would be fear. That's just fear. Kind of fear of people's reactions, but then also fear of who you may be afterwards. So like, it's almost like you're afraid of who's inside of you, kind of thing. But yeah, I don't think there's anything that's ever stopped me, but there may have been many things that have kind of diluted the potency of what I wanted to come with. The number one thing would be fear. It wouldn't be a fear on anything particular, because this fear comes in different shapes and sizes depending on the situation.
And, it's so real, because no matter how old or young we are, someone could be listening to this right now and they're feeling like they've got a calling or they've got an idea and they want to pursue that, but fear, this fear of what people might say, or just needing the approval of other people, feeling like they don't belong or they're not good enough, or for some reason, they're not entitled to achieve or do or have that thing. And it's massive when we call it the imposter syndrome, And I guess at different levels of your success, it appears again. So you break through, you achieve something, and you go into your next level, and the same thing kicks in again. Yeah. How do you confront that and overcome that? I'm
comfortable with the fact that fear will never leave. It's like, it will never leave you, innit? It's not, because when I was younger, I wouldn't say younger, but I'll say probably 3 years ago, I really wanted to be fearless. So have like no fear whatsoever. But now I'm understanding that you can never really be fearless. You just know how to deal with fear. So it's the same way how you can never, it's like conquering the devil, innit? You can never conquer the devil. You can never be in a situation in your life where there is no Satan ever. He will always be there, innit? But you have to know how to fight temptation. You have to know how to be efficient in spiritual warfare. That's the kind of basis on how I kind of see fear. So what's been helping me a lot lately, and this is a small type of fear, but it's a fear that everyone experiences, writer's block. So most of us, when we talk about writer's block, we're mostly talking about fear, and it's mostly talking about the fear of the blank page. And what I've kind of started to practice is, if you're afraid of something, just attack it. So just straight up attack that blank page. So what's kind of helped me in terms of creativity, I wouldn't say just in life in general, but with creativity is, whenever there's a new project that I really don't want to start, I would love the end product, but I don't really want to start it, I just get a blank page and I write whatever comes to my head about that thing. And in my head, that's me attacking the subject. I write whatever comes to my head, and then afterwards, that's when I start refining it and stuff like that. So just me making the first couple steps is the thing that allows me to conquer that fear. Awesome. Because once I spend the first 15 minutes into something, then I'm fine afterwards.
You got to do something, right? Get started. Start taking action towards overcoming that challenge. Confront that fear.
Yeah, you have to keep making steps. If you see the whole thing, if you see the whole elephant, then it's stressful for you. But then if you say, I'm going to eat one toe, just one toe, and then you just keep eating it chunk by chunk, then eventually you get to a place where you eat the whole elephant.
Awesome. And I'm sure along the way there have been different individuals that have come into your life and supported you at different times. Who have been your key mentors?
There has been two. One which has been there consistently, and one which is, even though I know they are there, it's been more. I've been more encouraged by their character and who they are.
Okay.
So there's one guy called Andrew Smith. Well, he's now a pastor, but he was. Oh no, he's not a pastor yet, but he's going to be a pastor. He was my mentor at my church. He was my youth leader.
Okay.
And he was a person that was just consistently speaking into my life. So he, from young, when I was doing poetry and stuff like that, when I was like 12 years old, he was always kind of encouraging me to continue working on the gift. And he always showed an enthusiasm about anything I did. So if I said, oh yeah, I made it into a local newspaper, even though if I didn't think it was a big thing, he went crazy off it. And I feel that even though there's been quite a few people that said, "Oh, well done, Andre," there's been very few people that showed that excitement, that kind of thing where if I achieve something, I know I'll go to him and he'd be like, "Yeah, that's amazing." And you need people around you that always kind of like provides that excitement for things that you do. The second one is the lady I was speaking to you about called Ruby Pseudo. She was the person who introduced me to Adidas, and Adidas is obviously Adidas then took me to Montreal for 5 weeks. I think Ruby Pseudo is a person who is very much, I don't know, I was very much taken back by the amount of love she gives to the young people around her. So she's very much a person who always concerned of the people around her. She's always working hard for the people around her. She's always making sure that her time is not her own and she's investing into the people around her as well. I consider her to be a very selfless person and also a very creative person because she runs her own marketing agency, right? And she has like young people around her that's working for her. But yeah, I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it, but she's a very compassionate person for people around her. And I don't know about you, but I find that a rarity. I don't find a lot of people that are really compassionate about people around them. So she's one of those people who have shown compassion to me, especially at a time when I didn't feel like there wasn't much help for what I was doing. There wasn't much support. When she came through and continuously tried to help me as much as she could and really fought for my case, then yeah, it really made an imprint in my life, and it's probably affected a lot of projects that I've worked on as well.
Is there a single piece of advice that each of those people gave you that stands out for you? Like, what was the best advice they gave you, each of them?
With Andrew, he never necessarily... He's given me many pieces of advice, but one I can think of right now is it's only going to get better. So it kind of made me understand that even though sometimes on the outside it may seem like many things are amazing, and it is amazing, I'm very thankful for it. Sometimes when you're on the day-to-day, you feel the struggle, you feel the hardship in it. So on the outside, obviously I'm 23, I've written 6 books and stuff like that. But then obviously once you've done it and you don't really think much of it. But he keeps saying to me, listen, this is the beginning for you. So at some point, this is not going to be anything for you. When you could write a book in a couple of days and it's not going to mean anything. But right now it's something for you. And he kind of gave me that whole ideology of when you go up the mountain, it's harder to breathe up in the mountain. And at first you don't know how to kind of adjust to it. But eventually, once you get used to the thinness of the air, by the time you get to the bottom of the mountain, you're able to do things that other people can't because the environment that you put yourself in is in a much intense environment. So he just kind of made me understand that, like, even when you go through hardship, it's for your betterment anyway. It's gonna make you a more efficient person in the long run anyway. So that's one piece of advice that he's given me. And one thing that Ruby said to me when I first met her, she was just talking about the whole idea of building your own thing and having the confidence in knowing that you own something. So she was talking about her business in general, and she was like, you know what, I made sure that I built this from the ground up. And she's got love all over the world. Like, people all over the world are following her. But she's like, that's something that I personally built. And she was just saying that for me in general, she's saying that I don't necessarily want to bring too much to the point where you feel like someone else has helped your career that much. Like, you need to actually be at a place where you fend for yourself and you know how to build your own empire in a sense. So that was something that I really took home. And
awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant, bro. And what's the one thing that you're most fired up about right now?
One thing I'm most fired up about right now is the magazine, Freedom and Balance magazine.
Tell us about it.
I actually don't even know what it is, if I'm honest with you. I know that Freedom and Balance is my personal brand anyway, and it's more going to be a ongoing journal than a magazine. Okay. It's going to be my thoughts that I put out all the time, the people that I meet, the places that I go. It's kind of like that, but I'm just going to call it a magazine. I'm excited of that because of when I was talking to you about the weaknesses of the consistency, that's putting me in a position where I need to be creating all the time. And once you're kind of in the process of always releasing a publication and always creating something, then I know that I'll get stronger over time.
Brilliant.
Because that's kind of the goal, right? So yeah, that's something I'm definitely crazy for.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for sharing that, man. And is there a book or a resource that you'd recommend to our listeners today? Someone who's listening, maybe they're that millennial 18 to 35-year-old, they're in business or they're thinking about going into business or developing their ministry. is there a book or a resource you'd recommend to them to get them started or move them forward?
Number one, fully study the book of Proverbs. So not necessarily read the book of Proverbs, but like go through it intricately and study each verse, because that is pretty much most of the business advice that you need anyway.
Right.
But one book that's outside the Bible is one book that really helped me is a book called 4 Hour Work Week.
Okay.
And it's
Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, Tim Ferriss, yeah. And it when you look at the cover and you read the back, it seems like a slimy book, and it's not slimy. It's not. It seems like they're trying to sell you this dream that's not real. But when you actually go through it, he's more talking about the philosophy of being efficient with your time and being efficient with the amount of business that you get done in the day, and knowing that even though business is good, it's not necessarily the be all and end all. Like, you have a life to live. So yeah, that book really really changed my way of thinking. I don't know necessarily how much business advice is going to give you, but it's definitely essential for the type of thinking it will give you.
Okay.
So yeah.
Pretty cool. Nice one. So Tim Ferriss, the 4 Hour Work Week book. Awesome. And just, I guess, wrapping up here, is there like a parting word of advice you want to leave with us? So something that will, I don't know, just whatever you want to share.
Well, it's my personal slogan. The more you create, the freer you become. So
awesome.
When I was in Montreal, one guy came up to me with my book and he says, "No, the only reason why you're here all over from London to Montreal is because of this." And he showed me my book. He's like, every time you create something, you open doors, you open portals, you open opportunities to places that you would never encounter.
Amazing.
So yeah.
Amazing. Awesome, bro. Thank you for sharing that so much, man. And it's been great to hear your story and great to hear the lessons you've learned along the way and how you've kind of grown into, and you, like you said, you're 23 now. There's so much more ahead of you. There's so much more for you to accomplish and achieve and difference for you to make in the lives of others. So really appreciate your time today and thank you for sharing with us. Where can we find your stuff? Do you have a website?
If you go to freedomandbalance.com, everything's there.
Brilliant. Andre, thank you, bro. God bless you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye for now. Thank you for joining the Rising Generation Leadership Podcast today. I really hope you enjoyed that episode. I hope you were inspired, you were lifted, you were encouraged. Hey, please remember to go to the iTunes page and subscribe right there, or check out the show notes from today's show at www.errollawson.com/podcast. And please share with your friends. Let somebody else be inspired. Thank you for listening. See you next week.